Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this month's Kinetics webinar. What are the next steps in your AI journey? You will recall from last month's thrilling 1-hour edition. We had Ben here telling us about some of the tips and tricks about using the free version of Copilot within tools like Bing and others, as well as the specific Copilot benefits for use within M365 and the Modern Workplace Suite, which was really informative. But when it comes to actually deploying AI within your enterprises, we thought it was important that we went into this next topic, which is what are the next steps on your AI journey? I might just cover some introductions and then cover off how we're going to be dealing with the webinar as we go. Firstly, we are recording this session and it's available for you after this in the chat, and we'll also be posting it on our website as a YouTube clip for you to distribute across your teams. If you have members of your business who aren't able to attend, it's a really useful resource. And I will actually refer you back to last month's one because there were some great tips and tricks with regards to AI from that session, which you will enjoy. Also, please feel free to use the chat within this webinar to ask any questions as we go. It's important for you to get the most out of it, and we're happy to deal with those questions as they come. You will also see in the chat there's a bit of a poll there, which I'll get Ben to talk a little bit about in a second. And also for your reference, there'll also be a copy of this presentation for you to distribute amongst your teams as a resource. So without further ado, I'm actually going to hand over to Ben. And if you attended last month's session, you'll know that Ben is one of our most experienced Cambium representatives, and he has been involved in not only the training field, but works very closely with Power App development and a range of other automations. So over to you, Ben. Get into it.
Right, thanks. Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, you should see a poll on screen, so it'd be great if you could contribute to that, and we'll take a wee look over the results. There might be some more of those as we go through as well, depending on how time permits. So, I'd really be interested in knowing how many of you are actually using AI already in your web browser. Whether that be Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, or any other assistant. So feel free to give us a yes or a no on that and submit as well. Today's session is really around taking you further on your AI journey. So I say that in reference to continuing from last month's webinar, which is an awareness session around some of the things that we can actually do with AI, in particular Copilot. Now, as we go and we plan our AI journey, we've devised an AI roadmap for us to follow. We're going to go through this, and it doesn't mean that you've got to follow every element, or you might not use every element as you draft out your roadmap and your plan, but there's certainly things that you should definitely be considering as you go on your journey. So we are going to start off with our very first thing is building awareness. So in terms of building awareness, AI, to many people, particularly the generative side of AI, is a new thing, but AI as a whole is not. It's about 50 years old, as it were. So we really want to understand in terms of awareness what we can actually do with AI. And you can certainly automate things. With generative AI, you can draft and you can summarize, but we also want to be conscious of what things like the licensing costs and requirements are, how we get our data ready as well, and our policy. And we'll take you through a bit more about policy and helping you with updating your IT usage policy, as it were, acceptable use policy towards the end. But AI is already out there. and we definitely need to have guidance for our people on how to actually use it, as it were. But more about that as we go through. In terms of building awareness, what you already have in terms of AI, okay, both from a generative point of view, that was part of my question at the start. We've already got Copilot, we've got ChatGPT. I suppose you could put your head in the sand and just think that people are not going to use those in their day-to-day work, but I think you'd be fooling yourselves if you make that assumption. When tools are available to us via the internet, people generally go and find them and use them, quite often without any guidance, of course.
Yeah, Ben, I'll just speak up here as the resources that we've already got on our website, specifically related to AI, they've actually followed this roadmap framework, and so please feel free to use, I think, what is now 5 different webinars, including this one, which are pertaining to our utilization of AI internally, but also might be providing some use cases for you and building that awareness with your teams. Thanks, Ben.
Okay. Right. So, second item on our roadmap: change plan. Okay. These are some stats that I've picked up from various events I've attended and speakers at those events. That although AI, of course, we view it as a technology change, it is actually really all about the people. So this is one thing that I had quoted at one presentation I was at that Microsoft delivered, that it's 99% about the people, and it's about taking our people on that journey. Okay, so in terms of the things we should have in our change plan, communications, being clear about how we roll, as it were, and how we're going to use it and what is out there. Creating a dedicated team of champions. Okay, which suggests that on any project where you're implementing a new system, new IT, but certainly on the AI front, definitely having champions and also potentially with that early adopters. Now, the change is ongoing, as with any technology. So you really can't just ignore it. It's going to, be leveraged or in front of us. No matter how we try to control it, the features will, flow through. I suppose Copilot in Edge is a great example of that. At one point you had to dig deep to actually get to it. Now there's a big icon on the right-hand side of the toolbar. Okay. Now there's plenty of other generative AI tools out there. Okay. So of course, our people will look to, our leaders, our specialists to get guidance on them. We'll talk a bit more about how you assess tools a bit later on. But having a change plan and embracing the change is definitely key. The next, readiness assessment. So this really ties in with if you are going down the route of Copilot and getting Copilot licensing within your Microsoft 365 tenant. Now, I say that, and I'm sort of going to contradict myself. Really, we should be doing a readiness assessment whether you're going to go down the Copilot route or not, because having our data, well structured with appropriate permissions on it, appropriate sensitivity types identified, is key whether you're going to go down the Copilot route or not. So in terms of readiness assessment, of course, you could go and do this yourself, but that would be a huge undertaking to just look at things manually. So we certainly have tools that can assist you on that, and they can help to identify some of the key things that you really want to be cautious of, because they become easy to leverage when you do deploy Copilot licensing. So they include things like sensitive data types. Where have we got things like maybe credit card numbers, other bits like that that we want to know about, but also control. Okay, structure as well. How is our data actually structured? Is it ready? Is it in a nice sort of good structure? Is it well structured as well? Permissions, being able to check those. Most people don't go back and continually check the permissions that they have on their content. So if I think of a life cycle of a document in SharePoint, by default, the team that's got access to that SharePoint will have access to it. But as it goes through its life cycle, it's potentially shared to members outside the team, even potentially parties outside the workplace. So being able to analyze that and resolve where there may be issues in terms of those permissions, again, is key. Oversharing, again, that ties in a bit with the permissions. That's where we have shared beyond the boundaries of that team, beyond that SharePoint site or that team within Teams as well. We can get a good overview of those. Also, ghost content. So you might be wondering what ghost content is. Well, that is usually where we have someone who owned the content at some point, but they are no longer there. Great example with Teams is that we have a person who maybe set up a team, is the owner of the team, but they've since left the organization. So who's now managing the content and the administration of that team? So a readiness assessment will be able to identify all of those things. And although not quite classified as a readiness assessment, of course, don't forget your people and how to get them ready. That really should be falling within that change plan that we talked about on the previous slide. Our next item, documenting your workflows and your processes. So as we've put there, a crucial step in utilizing AI effectively. Well, how does it help? Okay, well, documenting your workflows and processes, it's going to give us clarity and organization. Generally, what we're looking to do with AI is to improve those workflows and processes. So, of course, we need them documented. So documenting it will give us that clear understanding of the process. And that's essential in designing any AI system automation to enhance the process. We really want to have clarity on what the current process is, of course. Okay, data structuring. Well, AI thrives on data. So in terms of help in structuring the data, we want to make it that it's accessible and understandable for AI algorithms. It's going to help us with efficiencies. Once we start to document our workflows and processes, we start to see where there may be redundant steps, where there may be blockers. And these are likely to be the things that we want AI to help us streamline. Error reduction. We can make it easier for AI to understand the correct sequence of actions and identify anomalies, thereby reducing errors. Okay, and our last one there, continuous improvement. So AI can actually provide insights into process optimization. There's actually a tool within Power Automate where you can actually analyze your flows or record processes that you do and get it to feed back on those. Okay, but we should be looking at reviewing our workflows even once we have got them, automated or utilizing AI to continuously improve them and innovate. One thing I've noted recently within terms of Power Automate itself is there is now a connector to iManage that never used to be there for some of our legal clients. I know that might be something that sort of resonates with yourselves if you do use iManage either as part of your practice management or document management suite. So, well, Okay, so our next bit, think about where AI can help us. So, what are you doing that you feel actually takes too long? Or it could be those tasks that you don't actually particularly like doing. No. Uh, so one thing, I'm not saying I don't like doing this, but minute taking, for example, I'm not sure that there are many people who are fans of minute taking. Of course, you can utilize AI with Copilot in Teams to actually, make the notes for you. In fact, you can already use AI to do a transcription. So we've already got a minute taker within our Teams environment. Of course, it does also mean in that example there that the people who are there can actually all focus. No one's feeling like they've got the responsibility of taking notes, and with that in mind, can't really concentrate on what's actually happening within the meeting. So we've got some examples there of where AI can help. Probably one of its biggest things where you can take advantage of it is in terms of manual processing. So when I think about manual processing, that could be you've still got paper processes. They might be electronic in some ways. You print off the paper form, but it's generally still going around the traditional way in terms of how you process that information, as it were. Hey, we've got on there knowledge sharing. So you can actually use AI to create chatbots and share knowledge easily using those by using natural language queries to ask questions. We've got image creation. So if you're not a creative, you can easily use AI to create an image and get into, sometimes I call it the first base of task drafting and summarizing and research. We've got examples, we can certainly use AI to help us with that. Hey, AI is generally a great starting point when it comes to summarizing documents, presentations, web pages, articles, and as I say, getting to first base when you're trying to get ideas or draft ideas, as it were, and get to that first draft and, move on and develop your draft further. Right. Data analysis. I don't know how many of you out there who actually use Excel. I'm not going to put that in as a poll question, as it were, but I think almost everyone touches Excel these days. And if you're an Excel user, part of that is probably doing data analysis with it. I think back to when I worked in finance and payroll, and it was very manual in terms of the data analysis. We did present nice pivots at the end, and that was all very clever, but it took about a day's worth of work to actually get the analysis done. You can simply use tools like Power Query now to actually, automate that data analysis, either on a daily, weekly, or even multiple times a day basis, a cadence of your choice.
Hey there, Ben. Just
Yeah.
got a question there from Ben Lavender. Is there a way to get good quality minute taking and transcription outside of the Teams environment? He's just referencing transcription within Word, but he doesn't seem to be able to get as good results. Have you had any experience with ways to get it outside of Teams?
Okay, I don't. There are plenty of third-party tools out there, so we'll sort of touch on that a bit later on. Of course, it's investigating what those are and doing a bit of due diligence, but we'll come to that a bit later on one of our later slides.
Okay.
Right. So preparing our data. So we mentioned, you'll see that this sort of follows on from the readiness assessment. Right, so now, again, I'm going to say, right, whether you are going to go down the route of going and investing in Copilot in terms of Copilot licenses, you should be doing this anyway with your data that you've got in SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, email, all of those. And that's to have sensitivity policies and sensitivity labeling. If you're wondering what is sensitivity labeling, well, that's where you can mark up content. For example, it could be a Word document, an Excel, an email, and say, right, well, what's the consumption for this? Is it something that's confidential within our workplace? Is it that it can be publicly available, and you can put labels on there, and you can have policies that will stop the circulation of things that meet certain labeling types. For example, something that's confidential, if you go and attach it to an email, it can bring up an alert or a notification to say, right, should this really be going outside of the organization if you put an external email on it? Hi. In terms of other bits around preparation, how you retain data. So again, you can utilize retention policies and retention labeling. One of my colleagues, Reese, and myself, it's an ongoing project, but we've been working with a client on actually automating this. So their retention labeling and their retention policies. Making that whole life cycle of their documents, nice and easy for them to actually maintain. Okay. You may have things that obscure, what results you're going to get back when you're using AI tools. I remember AI tool in terms of Copilot, it's great for drafting content. So if you've got redundant, obsolete, trivial data, well, that's going to skew what you get in terms of your draft potentially. In fact, even without, again, utilizing Copilot, if people are using search within Microsoft 365, that's going to pick up that redundant, obsolete, and trivial data as well. So we really need to have thoughts around, how we actually deal with that, and take that into account. Archiving. And with archiving, it may be you want to reference that content. You certainly want to be able to look over it, of course, but potentially you don't want Copilot to pick up the archive data. You want to refer to it and see what your policy on IT may have been a few years ago, but you certainly don't want it to be pulling detail from that and creating new content for you. And then we lead into destruction. Are we actually keeping things way too long than we need to? Of course, we'll all have compliance regulations that we actually have to follow. And again, preparing our data, making sure that we do address any oversharing, and what we may define as shadow users as well, people who've got access to content who it's been done by sharing a link versus they're part of the team that's got access to that content. Just want to point out, as Copilot actually leverages data and it creates content for you. For example, if you do want it to draft a document for you, if you've got your sensitivity labeling applied, if it pulls from different documents, the new document it creates will automatically have sensitivity labeling applied to it that follows the highest level of label on any of the documents it pulled into the draft. So for example, if you had a document that was confidential and one that was marked as highly confidential, and it pulled those into your draft, the labeling would be highly confidential, automatically. So, you've got an advantage there as well. Okay. So AI policy. Now, this is something we should probably be considering right now, and more about how we can help you towards the end. But in terms of the type of things we should have in our AI policy, well, how do we actually want people to use AI? We should be clear on the expectations on what the approved tools are, if any. Like I say, plenty of them are out there. We can already touch on them. Copilot in your browser is already there. Anyone can use it. ChatGPT, Gemini, plenty of others too. Okay. What are the security and risks of those tools as well? Okay. What we've called shadow AI on there. Just like any shadow IT, there might be certain tools out there that people are using that we definitely don't want them to. Now, in terms of this, we want to be able to let people give feedback to it. These tools are constantly sort of changing, evolving, new tools on the market. So we want to be able to gather that feedback, and also as we use the tools, be able to feedback on what issues there may be as well. Now, it's all well and good having a policy, but we certainly need staff to be trained not only on the tools as you'd expect, but also on the policy as well and what the expectations are within that policy too. So it's a good chance as you look at embracing AI and updating your acceptable use policy in terms of IT, that you also incorporate training on those changes to the policy and on how best to use the AI tools that we do want our staff to use. So our next item here, assess AI tools. Okay, so Microsoft gives us guarantees in terms of security. We talked about this on the previous session in terms of Copilot and how it treats your data and all the other bits tied in with that. But you're certainly likely to start using other AI tools that are not Microsoft-based tools. So I mentioned it earlier, we need to do our due diligence. So that comes down to a bit around function. What are they actually going to be used for? What do they actually do? The security. Okay, so it's all great having a very functional tool that's going to save us potentially heaps of time or make our life better. But what's the security around it? Already I can compare Copilot to using Gemini. When I use Copilot in my browser, I'm signed in with my Kinetics account and my data is actually protected. As I chat with it and ask it to do things, my data is protected. Well, what's happening if I go off and use, Gemini? Has it got that same protection? Well, it can't have the same because it's not part of the Microsoft 365 suite, but there might be some protection around it. So I certainly need to do my due diligence on that. Also, what support is available for us for those tools? Of course, when it comes to Copilot, we know we've got Microsoft support, as it were, but what about other tools we are looking to utilize? And the time is probably now to find out what else is there that applies to the industry that I actually work in. If you're not looking into that, you can certainly guarantee that potentially your competitors are looking at what tools are out there that apply to their industry. I certainly know in the legal industry, there's a lot of tools out there that we've come across with clients that are investigating those. In fact, Henchman and Spellbook, just a couple that we're finding our legal clients are investigating that will help them.
So Ben, just back to Ben Lavender's question, are you aware of any sort of specific tools that might be able to work with Word as a third party, or just really some brainstorming?
Yeah, there are minute-taking tools out there. Okay, but yeah, I'd need to go away and do a bit of a deeper dive into that and find out more about it.
Thanks, Ben.
Now, of course, I'm sure you've got lots of line of business applications, so it's probably the time now to start speaking to your vendors and find out, how is AI going to come into those tools as well. Again, when I think of the legal sector, generally our documents in the legal sector are not stored in SharePoint. So we're not likely to use Copilot to help us draft, summarize documents from that standpoint. We've got our traditional document management systems. So what are our vendors that provide those actually doing in the AI field? What's on their roadmap in terms of what they're introducing that's going to help us? Trained staff, of course, quite dear to my heart because I am, I would consider myself a training professional, as it were, and have been for about almost 30 years now. Okay, so AI, it's definitely part of, pretty much everyday life at work, and at home. So, let's train our staff on at least the very minimum, the basics, how we can use Copilot in Edge, how we can use Gemini in Chrome. Um, let's think about those specifics, that is use cases that apply to us, and document those and train, our teams on using those as well. Let's open it up to the opportunity it presents as well. What else could we actually be doing? And just remember, it's not just generative AI. Okay, I think sometimes we tend to get a little bit bogged down that it's all about the generative AI. There are lots and lots of generative AI, lots of AI tools, particularly within the Microsoft world, within Microsoft 365. All you need to do is go into Power Automate and see the amount of features under there to see what options there are, or simply look at your icons on your your tabs within the Microsoft suite as well, in terms of the AI tools we've got available to us. Okay, so in terms of deployment, okay, start small. There's probably some easy wins that you can do. So one of those is, I don't know if you've ever thought about chatbots. You've probably heard of them, but fairly easy to develop in Microsoft 365, and they can utilize a knowledge base of documents stored in SharePoint where you can simply do natural language queries, and get a result back, get assistance back, whether that's to do work internally or to assist your customers. Minute taking within Teams, again, a pretty straightforward one. In fact, you've already got the transcription tool, but if you want to take that to the next level, that does require Copilot licensing or a Teams Premium license, where it will do AI notes as well. And just think about those manual and paper-based processes. Just want to relay a story about one client that I've just been working with. They have taken their paper leave process and put it into SharePoint and using Power Automate to process those. And for one member of staff, it's actually saving them an hour a week. It impacts their whole workforce, so I don't know what the exact savings are, but just one member of staff is actually now saving an hour per week they were spending collating those paper forms and scanning them in and passing them to the finance department slash accountant. So 52 hours of their year is now saved. Pretty cool. So some quite easy wins that we can have potentially. Okay, so in terms of review, none of this ever stops. So in terms of our data, we need to continually assess and review that. So that comes to retention, sensitivity, that oversharing. Again, we can help you with systems and services that will enable you to do that. But we also want to regularly review processes and workflows so we can refine, improve, and simplify them. Again, Power Automate, if you use that, comes out with new features all the time. I've got one example where I used to utilize it to create a PDF output, and it was quite difficult to do in terms of it was a number of steps. They've introduced a new connector, which means it's now done. It's down to 2 steps, where previously it was about 10 or so steps that I had to create to do that. Okay. Not only review what are the current tools, but what is actually new to market as well. So keeping on top of that as well. Okay. Another one that's really dear to my heart, the sharing of our knowledge there. As we embrace new tools, we tend to learn a lot of new stuff, and get those sort of advantages of using those tools. But we tend to be quite poor at actually sharing that knowledge. So just because it doesn't mean I know. If you've learned how to solve a problem, you know, doesn't necessarily mean I know how to solve it. There, you know, you assume that maybe I should be able to, without even explaining it to me. Okay, so I'm certainly going to struggle, and of course that means inefficiency on there. So, and one of the great ways of sharing knowledge is utilizing some of those tools we've already got. Teams posting into there, but also creating a knowledge database. And you can do that quite simply within SharePoint. So what next? And so I don't know if Matt wanted to step in here, or you want me to go through this, Matt. Okay, I think you're muted at the moment.
Thanks for that, Ben. Yeah, one of the special offers we've got for people on the call is that we have gone to the trouble of developing a range of different policies that were referred to earlier in this webinar under addressing your policies. And one of them is an acceptable use policy. And we're happy to share a templated version of the acceptable use policy with people on the call. And this is something that will help you do some review before going any further on the AI journey, because as Ben said previously, it's really important for your people who are probably already getting access to these tools have a company view of what is acceptable for your organization. Now, this is just the first step in finalising that policy. Obviously, it'll give you some guidelines, and we're happy to work through with you. So please contact your account manager after this, and we're happy to distribute to those people on the call who show interest. So that's it from me, Ben.
Okay.